This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, last time we did class for Elizabeth's or Biz's birthday, and we did it in the store, and we made either flat things or whatever out of clothesline. Liz's daughter was there, and she made a little bowl. Elizabeth Venner was making a beach bag. Huge. Did you get it finished?
I have not. I had to find some more clothesline that matched my clothesline.
Ooh, that could be tricky.
Yeah. And I didn't, of course, remember where I got the original one, but I got some recently that will work. So.
All right, great. All right. Well, after we had our original class.
Oh, Lee, that's nice.
Oh, look how neat.
Let's see. Oh,
Wow.
cool.
I like the fabric around the top
nice.
too.
And you bound the top, or is that just wrapped?
Can't hear you.
Your mic's not on.
Yeah.
Yes, I bound the top, yes.
All right,
Because
great.
there's a lot of stuff in it, so. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you did
that's
say we could
fine.
do show and tell.
Well, I had made a bunch of, actually I made 8 bowls, intending to turn them into tote bags, and I kind of have accomplished that. This is one.
Oh, wow.
Look how cute that is.
For a little boy who loves dinosaurs.
I love that.
I did too. That's great.
And then I made me one. I have hoarded this fabric for a while.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And then there are 5 little girls that I made them for. And this is, kind of a mermaid type fabric.
Oh yeah, that looks nice.
And then another little girl thing with some butterflies.
Judy, are you going to let them pick the ones they want?
I'm talking to the mothers about that.
So when you sewed that on, then I guess you turned it inside out and put the fronts together, right? I'm trying to figure out how you did that.
Well, to sew the top on, if I can undo this, come on, dinosaurs. You end up with, you've got the right side of the fabric against the right side of the outside of the bowl, and then you stitch it on, and then you flip it up and top stitch it.
Wow.
Great.
You did
It
that all.
looks like you lined it.
Huh?
You lined your fabric?
Well, that's how it's made. The lining comes up and forms the case and the ruffle at the top.
Got it. Got it.
Okay. It's
No,
Karen
Elizabeth-
Charles's pattern.
Elizabeth, is that what you're trying to do, is make it like that?
No, I am going to put a lining in it, but I'm going to put I'm going to do the cording all the way up to the top, and then I have some leather handles that I'm going to put on it, and I'm going to put a lining in it though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, when I made mine, I made a lining for it, which was quite a deal because it was, of the conical shape.
Yeah.
And I did manage to make a lining and even put a couple pockets
Oh, that
in
looks
mine. But I wasn't gonna do that for the kids.
That's a lot of work.
So anyhow, it was fun, and that's, another idea what you can do with your rope bowls. All right, anybody else? Hi, Lee. Okay, so today we are dealing with our cupcakes, and as I told Liz, I'm going to go through embroidering one out just to show you the process. And then I'm going to switch over to my Epic and talk about different ways to make circles easy on the machine. Okay? And we'll get into the piping, which you asked for, Elizabeth.
What happened here?
Okay? So I sent you designs for 6 different cupcakes. You have 3 large ones, which if you saw the table mat and saw the picture of it in your handout, the large ones are large.
Large.
And comparing them to the small ones, I can get this on, get my camera to cooperate. That's a large one and a small one side by side there. So there's pretty good difference in size of the 2 of them.
They are so cute.
Thank you. They are fun. I had fun digitizing them. Okay, so we're going to just stitch out one of them today. If I can, let's see, would be in the, get to the right thing, cupcakes. Okay, and I want to do a small one, and I'm going to use a metal hoop to do it, but I have to do the 180 by 130 because the 100 by 100 is just a tad too small. So I've got my fabric in my hoop here. Okay, sorry, bear with me on my camera here. There we go. Okay, I've got my fabric just held in place with the magnets, and I've got a really crisp tearaway fabric in, or stabilizer in there. And we will get ready to stitch this puppy out.
Judy,
Yes,
could I ask you a question?
yes, you may.
I'm getting all kinds of information on the type of stabilizers to use with the magnets. What is your favorite way to stabilize?
Most often, I will just let the magnets hold the stabilizer to the hoop rather than trying to stick it to the hoop, you know, on the back side of the hoop.
Okay, so you're not using a sticky stabilizer usually?
No, I'm not using a sticky stabilizer,
Okay, thank you.
but that's a personal preference. Some people are really into the sticky stabilizers. But
All right, thank you.
you're welcome. You can ask any kind of questions you want. All right. In your handout, on page 2 and 3 are the stitch out sequences for the cupcakes. The difference being that there is the one cupcake with the cherry and the cherry stem on top has 2 extra steps. So that's called cupcake 3. The other 2, which are pink and orange on the pictures, are cupcakes 1 and 2. All right, so I'm going to be using the sequence for cupcake 1 and 2. And the first thing we're going to do is untangle the thread, and then to stitch out the placement line for the cupcake base. All right. So. Okay, and I got so excited about stitching it out that I forgot to do what the base around the design, which I really want to do because my fabric doesn't go all the way up to the top of the hoop. So I can stop at this point and go ahead and do a base around design, even though I've started embroidering the design. Okay. So now the machine is smart enough to know that I've already done color 1 and it's ready for color 2, which is my placement or my tack down for my cupcake base. And I have not used any steam-a-seam or any other fusible stuff on the back of my fabric that I'm using for my cupcake. You could use it on the cupcake base if you really wanted to, but I advise against using it for the cupcake top since we have the fusible fleece in it. It would limit the puffiness of it, and we want our icing to be kind of fluffy. So,
Interfacing on the back of that?
pardon, Elizabeth?
Have interfacing on the back of that black piece of fabric?
No,
Okay.
because it's print, it looks white.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it is.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's, if you will, naked.
Hey, Judy, do all the machines go back to where you left off if you do the basting line?
I'm sorry?
You know, you did that basting line after you did step 1. Do all the machines know to go back to where you ended?
As far as the FOF and the Viking do, yes.
Have they always done that?
I don't know. Because usually I can remember that I'm supposed to do it first.
Oh, I have to try this. Okay, I have to do that once. Okay.
Okay. And then I'm going to do the thing that I do when I take the hoop off, because I want to take my hoop off to trim my applique fabric. I'm going to unthread my needle and then cut my bobbin thread with my scissors and then immediately thread my needle back so I don't forget. And then take my hoop off and trim my applique. And sometimes with the metal hoop, if you're using scissors that are totally metal, like my other applique scissors like these, the magnets really want to have those, but these little ones with the plastic handles aren't as likely to be attracted to the magnets. Now the blade part of them is, but then the handle is solid plastic, so it doesn't, the magnets don't grab that when you're trying to trim an applique, which is kind of nice. Except I get too close to the, all right. All right, so now I've got my applique trimmed and I'm ready to come back in and do my satin line around my cupcake base.
Hey, Judy. I thought
Pardon?
I thought the AI would I did that one time and I forgot to put my hoop all the way back on when I trimmed,
Yeah.
and it was still gonna start sewing. It didn't tell me I couldn't sew until I put the hoop back on all the way. I thought the AI was supposed to not let you do something that wasn't, but it didn't. Is it
Well,
supposed to?
no, because they expect you to, sometimes you have a function that will put your hoop in trim position. So they
Mhm.
more expect you to put the hoop in trim position and not remove it.
Oh, okay. Because I didn't remove it all the way, but I just kind of pulled it down, trimmed it.
Yeah, I
And then I
understand.
forgot to put it back up, and it was started sewing in the wrong place.
Yep, been there, done that.
Okay.
Okay, and now, once it goes around with its little underlay stitches, I'm going to stop it anyhow, and I'm going to come back in and trim off these things that I call shaggies before it starts doing the satin line, because I don't want them sticking out of my satin line on my cupcake, and which is perfectly fine to do. Okay, now I'm gonna get rid of my shaggies here, or at least the long ones. And you'll notice that there was no underlay stitching, and there will be no satin stitching across the top of this cupcake base here, because that's going to be covered with the icing part. So there's no reason to have that satin stitch under there. And you don't need, depending on what fabric and what stitching covers that part of the design, it might be distracting, and you just don't need all that extra stitching in there. Okay, now I didn't quite get my shaggies all trimmed up, but instead of trying to fight them while I have it in the hoop on the machine, when I'm finished and take it out of the hoop, I've found that the easiest way to trim them is to take and fold right on the edge of your stitching, and then those little shaggies should stick up, and you can trim them fairly easily and carefully without getting into your satin stitches if you fold your background fabric away from the stitches. Okay.
Hey,
Judy?
Judy, are you putting those on just a piece of fabric, or are you going to, and then applique? Well, you're not making anything except doing the applique, right?
Right, I'm just doing the demo of the sequence of the applique.
So when we do it, we want to do it on either the circle or the,
Well, when I made the circle or the table mat, I just did it on a big piece of fabric according to the layouts that I gave you in the handout, and then I trimmed it up when I got it all quilted in it. Well, not the circle. The circle I made and then quilted. The table mat I quilted and then bound.
oh, okay.
Because of the way I wanted to do the circle, I wanted to have that piping on the edge. So, and to make it pillow, put it together pillowcased. So I had to do my quilting after I had done, put the piping and the backing on. Okay, so our next step is to put the detail lines on our cupcake base. And two of the cupcakes, 2 and 3, have triple stitches. Cupcake 1 has satin stitches. Okay, so now our next step, I'm going to change my color to the color that I'm going to do for the icing part. And our next step is to stitch out the placement line for the fusible fleece and the fabric for our icing. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to put my, and you can see, I hope, that the stitching for the icing comes down across the top of this cupcake, and that's why we don't have any of that satin stitching on the top of the base of the cupcake. All right. So I'm going to put my fusible fleece on here with the fusible side down. Back down. Okay, and again, I'm doing my thing of cutting the bobbin thread without my needle thread threaded and taking my hoop off so I can trim my fusible fleece. And as I trim this, you will notice that my stitching on the fusible fleece is a little ways away from the placement line. And that was intentional because I didn't want the satin stitching to mash down the edge of the fusible fleece. I wanted it to be as puffy as possible. So I left a little space in there between the placement line. When I pack down the fabric, it will be much closer to the placement line.
I was wondering how you were going to do that with so the fleece also won't come through the visible.
Right. Okay. So now there's that same placement line is used for the fleece and the fabric. So I'm immediately going to put my fabric right on top of this after I've trimmed my fleece. Okay. So don't expect to have a separate placement line for your fabric. The same one is for the fabric and for the fleece. Okay, and we'll go through the same rigmarole to trim the fabric. Back. Thread. Okie doke. Ouch. And I'll just trim my fabric for my icing here. I want to trim fairly close. And the first thing that it's going to stitch out is not the satin stitch, but it's going to stitch out the detail lines in the icing, and then it'll do the satin stitch. Okay. go. And I always like to go back and kind of lift up my trimming because the first time around, I don't always get it as close as I would like it to be. So, okay. And now we are ready for, excuse me, camera, ready for our detail lines on our cupcake. Maybe. The fusible fleece isn't very thick, but it works really well, I think, in these to give it enough puff. Okay, you don't need to sit here and watch. The satin stitch is the last step, and I can, if I wanted to finish this later, I could do my save current state and then come back. If I don't take it out of the hoop, I could come back and I could finish it. But for right now, I'm going to stop it and go on to the rest of the information in the class rather than having you just sit and watch it stitch out that satin stitch. Are there any questions as to what we've done so far? Okay, so I'm just gonna flip this off and take it off. And in a minute, I need to move my camera so I can get to the other machine. So who knows what you'll see in this process. Here we are, over here at the Epic, where I've got my Sew-ciety table set up and a few other options for doing circular things. All right, now we're just gonna play with this, what we have here for our what did I do with the other piece? Oh, it's over there. Okay. All right, so now we're set up on the Epic for sewing. I have my Sew-ciety table, and the Sew-ciety table I have is called a wish table. And I don't know that you can see them on the camera, but there is a row of holes already drilled into the table here. See those holes that are drilled into the table? And when the table comes with this thing they call a circle sewing tool. Okay? And it looks stuck into a piece of cardboard because it has little prongs on the back side. And those little prongs sit in those holes. And there is a pin for the center of your circle with a little guard to go over to keep your fabric on and your fingers off of that pin. And you can set it, you can stitch up to almost a, depending on which way you have this attachment turned on your table, you can turn it so the pin is closer to the needle, or you can turn it so the pin is further away from the needle. And if you go out to the very farthest edges or the farthest holes in the table, your pin then will be like 11 3/4 of an inch away from your needle.
Wow.
And that means that you could sew a circle that was 23.5 inches in diameter. So, but you can also sew small circles. Like I said before, if you turn the tool so that the pin is closer to the needle, then you could sew a circle as small as 4 inches. So I used that when I made the cupcake circle, and it worked really, really well. Our other options, if you have a Sew-ciety table that does not have the holes in it, Sew-ciety has come up with a, my lighting is terrible, with a thing that they call a universal circle and straight tool. And what it is it comes in this little package, and Carol has them at the store, except for this one, which I borrowed. What it consists of is, that won't come out of here. It has a sheet of directions, and it has this mat, much like your flippy mat that you use with the rulers. It has a mat that you can, that is sticky on the back, and you can put over your Sew-ciety table. And then there is a plastic piece that has a pin and guard on it that you peel off a protective sheet on the back, and then you can stick it onto this mat, which is stuck to your Sew-ciety table, and then make a circle of whatever size you want. Or you can use the straight edge of this as a guide on the edge of something so that you can sew, parallel to an edge. So that's an option for people who want to make large circles and have a Sew-ciety table, but they don't have the wish table that came with the holes and the tool already.
And does that make it as big as the Sew-ciety table?
I'm sorry?
Does that make it as big as the Sew-ciety table one?
It'll make it
Bigger.
because the mat goes out to 29. So you
Okay.
get a bigger one than you could with the wish table.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're
Judy,
welcome.
did you
Yes.
get that piece that goes in the holes with your Sew-ciety table, or was that a separate accessory?
If you buy the wish table, it comes with it. If it
I have
has the holes, you get the tool.
I have the holes, but I didn't get that part of it.
Did you get the little blue tray?
Yeah, I
Have
think
a
so too. I
tray.
have the holes, but I don't have that other piece either. I think that's true for me too.
You don't
Guys are probably
understand.
older, Elizabeth.
It comes in this little, plastic bag. Might look around and see if maybe you should have gotten, there were two things that came with the wish table. One was something that you could attach to your table and the machine and would make it so it didn't move, kind of a lock thing. And then there was this circle tool too. And they came in little separate packages.
Mine just came with the drawer and I do have a push pin, but it doesn't have that tool, that metal part on it that fits into the other holes, which would be very nice because those pins tend to come out.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just buy that part separately, Elizabeth.
I'm gonna
check it out.
Yeah, you could check with Carol and you'll probably have Kathy check it out and see if we can just buy those separately.
What was that called?
It's called circle sewing tools. It's for use with deluxe and wish tables. Okay.
Judy, can we buy that other mat at the shop, the one, because I don't have the wish table?
Right, yes. She has one at the shop, and as of Wednesday, she'll have two, unless somebody buys the other one. Because I'll take this back.
So put it on my list.
Put it on your list, your shopping list,
Yes, please.
since I'm your personal shopper.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
You're welcome. And then we have our circular attachment that comes from the machine manufacturers, the one that you're used to with our little push pin tool to hold our stuff in place as we stitch our circle. So we've got at least 3 options for making a circle. All right. And I think, is anybody not familiar with our circle attachment that comes from the machine manufacturer?
How big can the circle attachment make the circle?
How big? It can go just a little over 20 inches. Okay. And sometimes it's difficult to get the exact size on your one from the machine manufacturers, because the slider will click into the metric ones, and if you're looking for something in an inch measurement, then there are inch measurements on it, but they don't click in, and it's very easy to, as you're stitching, if you put any pressure or whatever on your fabric, that slider can move on you. Okay. So you need to be really careful. It works really well, and it gives you the smallest circle you can make on this is, it's much smaller than the 4 inches from the Sew-ciety table. It's about 2 inches, or a little bigger than 2 inches. So you've got lots of options for making circles. Since I remembered that my Sew-ciety table would make circles for me, and in making that block of the month quilt starting this month, and we're making fairly good sized circles in that quilt, I really, really like the one on the Sew-ciety table. But back to the subject at hand here. Let's see, my cupcake
Judy, is that how you made your circles with your Sew-ciety table?
on the quilt.
Yes.
Yes. And that's how I made the circle on the cupcake circle thing. So if I were going to make a circle out of this cupcake that you so patiently watched me stitch out, I'm going to use one of the smaller circle or places on the Sew-ciety table. And then I'll show you a little bit about how I did the piping. All right. So let's see, where's the middle of this little puppy? This is not very exact, but it'll work. All right. That's not. And the holes in the Sew-ciety table are 3/8 of an inch apart. I don't know how they decided on that size, but that's a fact that we can live with. And if you can't get the circle to be just exactly like you want it, you always have the option of moving your needle position to adjust the accuracy of your circle. Okay, and I've done that because there were times when I just wasn't getting the right size circle without moving my needle position. Okay, so now I've got this auditioning to make sure that my circle is not gonna get into my cupcake just by twirling it around here, and then I'll put my little stopper back on my pin to keep my fingers off of the pin and to keep it from jumping off while I'm sewing. And I want to put some piping on, and I had a piece of piping here. Here we go. I have a little piece of piping left from when I made the circle with the 3 cupcakes on it. And piping foot does not work with the IDT or IDF. So when you make piping,
What did you say doesn't work with the IDF?
the piping foot doesn't have a spot in the back, the plastic one. When you make piping, I always like to make my piping such that my piece of fabric is wider than what I need. And then once I've made my piping, I use one of those plastic piping trimming tools to trim it down so it has a 1/4 inch allowance on it. It's much easier to get it around the cord and have better results if you have extra fabric than trying to cut your fabric to the exact size first and then trying to get it to wrap evenly around the cord as you're sewing it. It's much easier to have extra fabric and then to trim it to the right size. So when I went to do that circle, my piping is cut on the bias so it can be in a circle. I'm going to put my needle, leave my needle in the 0 position, and I'm going to put my foot down so that oh, I know what your problem is. Didn't tell it was going to sew.
Debbie,
Yeah.
I think your microphone is causing feedback.
Oops.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so your piping is going to go with the cord in the cutout in the bottom of the foot. And then with your needle in 0 position, it's going to, let's see, can you see there's a little red mark right where the center needle position is, and that's just to the right of the cord. It's just to the right of the cutout in the bottom of the foot, so that your cord is going to follow right in that slot as you sew. And I just put and I don't have a long enough piece of piping to go all the way around, but it'll just track, and the circular attachment will keep it going in a circle, and the piping foot will keep your cording where you want it as you go around your circle. And once you get all, question?
I do have one. Judy,
Yes?
are there different size piping feet?
There are 2 different sizes of piping feet. There's a regular one, which I have on here. There's also a metal piping foot if you prefer the metal feet. And then there's one called a mini piping foot for very small cord. The size cord that I have in here is 1/8 inch. And that's the regular size, or that's the regular foot, not the mini foot.
Did you say a metal one?
There is a metal one. I like the plastic one so I can see
Absolutely.
it. Yeah. Yes. Anyhow, so once I had gotten all the way around the circle and ended my piping, I had my circle of piping on my fabric, and I did not trim my circle yet. I took my backing fabric, which this is my backing fabric here, or I pretend backing fabric, and just laid it right on top of what I had already stitched, because everything was still in place and everything was in line, and keeping my piping foot on, I just came back and I really should put my backing fabric on my pin also. All right, so I didn't accidentally get it out of line, and it stayed nice and smooth as I came around to my circle. And just stitched out my circle again, and the piping foot is staying right in line, and I left an opening of about 4 inches or so I could turn it. And then once I had gone all the way around the circle, like almost all the way around, leaving my hole for turning, then I could take my fabric off and trim it to the 1/4 inch that I could see for the edge of my piping. And because it's bias, it's gonna not give me a fit when I turn it, and then I can just, I need to trim it. Hang on. This is not a good trimming job, sorry. Okay. Once I had trimmed it and then turned it, then my piping is now my edging on my circle. Okay.
How did so you cut the very center of your backing if you sewed around the whole circle? Or how did you turn it?
I left a 4-inch opening
Oh, okay,
and then I hand sewed that closed.
got it.
Okay. But it was so easy with the circular tool to make a perfect circle and to have my piping on the edge, which I have a thing for piping. Okay. I like piping on the next to the binding on my quilts. I like piping on edges of things. I just like piping. The piping with the cord in it is my preference. So does that make sense, Liz Gomer?
Yes, I want to know how I get that in thirds. I've been sitting here messing with this.
How you get what, Liz?
Well, I've got a circle, but you got 3 things. You got to do this in thirds, right?
Well, you can, yes. And I used, like it says in the handout, I used one of the ruler, Sew-ciety Westerly rulers, which has 6 little slots in it that are evenly divided, and I just marked 3 of them.
Okay, so I don't have that, so I've been sitting here measuring and I'm not coming out right. If I do one, then I should be able to get the other 2, right?
Well, if you have anything that is like a 6-pointed star, you could just use 3 of the points. If you had a 6-pointed even star, that would give you the 3 points. If you have a protractor, you would be at 120 degrees. You don't have to have, you can, and this Sew-ciety ruler, I thought I left it out. It's only like 4 inches square. So I had to draw the lines and then really extend them to get my lines to make my thirds for the diagram.
Okay, so you measured 1 inch from the center, right? And you put and that's where your first one goes.
And that's where the bottom of the cupcake sits, 1 inch from the center.
All right.
The real thing.
All right, so then if I go 1 inch, no. So then if I go back to the center and try to put that cupcake so it looks in the right place, rather than worry about putting lines in.
Do you have a triangle that has equal sides?
I probably do if I look around here.
Because that's what is in, that's what, if you draw lines on the bottoms of these cupcakes and until they meet, you're going to come up with a triangle that has equal length sides.
Oh.
Liz, do you have one of these?
Yes, he's sitting right here in front of me.
So somehow you should be able to transpose the
Oh.
It's 120 degrees in there.
Yeah, so you got this.
Which is two 60-degree angles.
Right. If you've got just 60-degree angles, just skip every other 60 degree.
Exactly.
1, 2, 3. There's 4 60-degree angles on here.
Oh, yeah, that's the way mine is too.
Well, there has to be a way to get this in thirds.
Because they're doing the 60 degrees from as if you had straight crosshairs at 90 degrees. They're doing them from, assuming you're working from a straight edge, not working in a circle.
I still think you should be able to center it some way, or just on the machine, after you do the first one.
Tell you what, Liz.
What?
When you printed out your instructions,
Mm-hmm.
if you take that diagram
Mm-hmm.
and you find the center of what you want to embroider on,
Mm-hmm.
and you put this diagram right on top, so the center of the diagram is on the top of is right over the center of your fabric.
Yeah.
And then you can make a little tiny hole out here at the very edge of the circle. Make the hole and use your marking pen to make a mark here and
Yeah.
at the end of each one of those lines at the edge of the circle, make a mark in the center, and then connect your lines to connect the points that you've made through your template.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand that. I just have to go press all this, get rid of all the markings I got on here.
Okay. But I think if you use that template that you printed out
Okay.
and make some little holes in the very edge of it
Yeah.
and the center and connect the dots.
Send your lines out,
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
Judy.
Yes,
I said, good idea.
thank you. Anything else? I mean, there's a bazillion ways you can use these cupcakes, and the picture of the wall hanging I thought was really cute. It's going to take a little while to, to stitch that out, but they gave us very good dimensions for that. And you can see that what I called Cupcake 1 is the design that they used throughout on their layout. But I wanted some variety in the cupcakes, so I made some different ones. Of course, we had to have one with a cherry on top.
That's my
So,
favorite.
I mean, you certainly could use something besides black for the bottom. You can make them a little more realistic. I think they would be cute on towels. Lee likes to make towels with her designs.
You're right. They would be. I thought about it.
And
You didn't end up ironing. You don't end up ironing that fusible fleece though, right?
Well, I kind of did. But I didn't press on it. I steamed it, and usually, a good dose of steam on fusible fleece will cause it to fuse. And then I fused a whole layer of fleece behind both of these before I quilted them. Like the circle, I fused that fleece on to the fabric before I put the piping on and before I sandwiched it. And the quilting on this was done all in one go. I mean, I started in one place and I stopped right next to it without ever cutting or breaking my threads. So
Whoa,
that was kind of fun. When I was doing the lines, and I'd come up with a line here and hit the bottom of the cupcake, I would just go around the edge of the cupcake until where the line continued. And then when I got to the piping, I'd just stitch in the ditch and come back to my next line and come down and around, and and then the last thing I did was to completely outline the cupcakes, which duplicated some of the quilting I had done previously, but that's okay in my book.
I agree, because it makes it stand out more too.
Yeah. And it makes it a lot easier too. Yeah, it would have looked, to me, it would have looked funny if I had just, wherever I had to go around the edge of the cupcake, if I hadn't come back and completed the stitching around the cupcake. It just wouldn't have looked right.
Right, exactly.
And
I love how perfect that circle is.
that's that circle attachment.
Yeah.
I mean, I did use the Sew-ciety circle tool, but the circle attachment from the manufacturer is plenty big to do that, because let's see, out of my way. If my needle is here, no, I'm being sorry, a brain problem here. I can certainly get it out. Maybe I can't. No, I can't. It's not the circle attachment. The manufacturer circle attachment is not big enough to do the circle that I did here.
Right.
Okay. So you need some other way to do your circle than the manufacturer's circle attachment. But they were fun. And the channel quilting on the table mat was done the same way, where I would, if I could go all the whole distance, I would, but if I couldn't, I would just then outline the cupcake to where I could get up to where I needed to be. And then because it was quilted before it was bound, I could just run off the edge and then come back on. I didn't have to stitch in the ditch because I didn't have my binding on when I was quilting the table mat. But I was doing my quilting with the Westerly Sew-ciety rulers, because then that made my line straight.
Is that a straight edge?
It's what they call the 12-inch arc. It's straight on one side and curved on the other. It's one of their very basic tools.
So you didn't draw any lines on
the table mat? No. On the circle, yes.
Okay.
And I started with that little ruler that has the 6 divisions, because it has, in addition to having 6 slots in the ruler, it has lines that subdivide the space between those slots. So then you can turn it and get more divisions than just the 6, if that makes sense.
It does. So you're bisecting each of the 6.
Exactly, and more. And then you bisect those.
Okay.
Because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's 8 lines in each third of this circle. So I just kept subdividing until I had as many lines as I thought I wanted. Okay,
And you said that's another westerly?
yeah, it comes in a set. If you give me a second, I'll go get them.
Okay.
The set is called Mini Crosshair Rulers. Like this. Okay. And there are 3 of them in there. This is the size they are.
Oh, huh.
And it says like mini 6. So that's the one I used. It has 6. How can you see that on the camera?
I can see it.
Okay, it has 6 slots. And then it's got these lines in between them that you can then rotate and subdivide using that. And there's a 6.1, there's an 8.1, and this one is fun because there's 5. If you wanted to make something like, with stars, with 5 pointed stars, or some 5-sided something. All 3 of them come in the set.
So you just used it for marking. Is that what that's for? Is for marking?
Yes.
And did
That's
you
what
do?
they call their crosshair. They make big, they also make 11 or 12-inch crosshair rulers, and they make an 8-inch crosshair ruler, but they're not always the same variety as you got with this little group. And once you've marked, you can always just extend the lines for, however big a design you want to deal with. But it does come in real handy.
What do you like to use to mark with? What pen or chalk
I
or,
use the Friction pens.
okay. Color, what you prefer
Color?
of those pens?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Depends on what you're marking on. Because sometimes if you were marking on white, any of the colors would show up. If you're marking on black, then sometimes like the pink will show up on black, but they all disappear equally. Well, sometimes on darker fabrics, they'll leave like a little waxy thing, but you can take a wet cloth and a damp cloth and rub over them, and that'll usually go away.
A waxy thing?
Well, it looks like a little waxy mark once you've ironed over them.
Yeah, I feel like it looks like a ghost line.
Yeah, and I didn't know how else to describe it, but that's a good way to describe it.
And you were able to get it out with water?
You can usually, take a damp cloth and rub it, and it'll come out.
I'll have to try that because I have some things that I can't get it off.
Okay. And again, you can't see this. This is the straight edge that 12-inch arc ruler
Uh-huh.
that I use to quilt the table mat. And you use the ruler foot, and then because the table mat is longer than the ruler, when you get to about here, you just slide it down and keep going. If you haven't used the rulers, they can be addicting. and they can be fun, and you can do a lot of things with them. Anything else, Lee? Or Elizabeth? Or Liz Gomer? Did you get your marks made, Liz?
Can't hear you, Liz.
I got lots of marks on here, so I have to go remove them.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was sitting here trying to get it even. Now I know what you did, and so I messed with it. I've got that figured out, but there's too many lines.
Either that or use a different color.
You know, I bought a whole bunch of those and I can't find them.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I looked last night I can't find them.
Did Ann borrow them?
No, because she wasn't here when I got them. I put them someplace.
Of course.
I understand that too well.
But I found one.
Okay, but now you got to go iron them off, huh?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, as long as it makes sense as to how to get them on there like you want them.
Yeah, now it makes sense, and I got it. I can get it marked right.
Okay.
I
How
have
about
faith
all the
in you.
rest of the stuff? Does that make sense about the circle part?
Yeah.
Okie doke.
Thanks, Judy. I'm gonna go. I have mahjong. What a fun
okay.
life I lead.
Bye.
Thanks, good to see everybody.
Thank you all for being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing some cupcakes next time.
Thank you, Judy.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Bye, Elizabeth.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Take care, ladies. Anybody else have questions? Okay, Wendy, did you do okay? Do you have any questions?
I'm not making the circle, so
I'm sorry, do that again?
I said I'm not gonna make the circle, so I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna stay safe and make a straight line.
All right, well, we all got to start somewhere, right?
All right, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome, Elizabeth. And next week, Elizabeth, I will send you that stuff for the workbook class.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay. Carol, you okay? Carol Foss?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Whoa. Whoa.
Wow.
I don't know. I've been having audio trouble, so I apologize for that.
That's okay. I see you signed on as Carol Foss and also caller 01. So
Well, that's because I'm not listening to you through my computer. I had to call in on my phone.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, I don't know. Alan doesn't know what it is. He's going to be working on it. But I missed the beginning. So I don't know. The first layer you put down was the stabilizer. Is that correct?
Okay. With the stabilizer and the fabric in the hoop, the first thing it does is the placement line for the paper cup part of the cupcake.
Okay, so what fabric do you put down? I'm confused about whether that's part of the applique fabric or.
Yes, it was this black polka dot fabric.
Okay, does that go right on
right on the
the
fabric.
on the
The-
stabilizer?
Yes. No, it goes
Okay.
right on you put your base fabric, your background fabric in the hoop with your stabilizer.
Oh, your background fabric. Okay. All right.
And I had forgotten to do based around the design, so I went ahead and let it stitch out the placement line for the base of the cupcake. And then I did my base around the design, and the machine came right back to the second step to do the tack down for the fabric. So that was the second color was the tack down for the fabric. And then I trimmed it, and the next color was the satin stitch, which did not cover the top part of the underneath, which ends up underneath the icing. That part
Right. I saw that. That part I saw.
okay.
I totally missed the beginning of when you were explaining the project, so I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll always be glad to go back over it.
Okay. So stabilizer and